The winter wind tore through Hawthorne Street like a blade. Snow scraped across the pavement and gathered in thin white lines along the curb. Beneath a flickering street lamp, a woman sat curled on a metal bench, her arms wrapped tight around two small children sleeping against her chest. Their breath drifted into the night in pale clouds. Elena Carter pulled her coat tighter around them, though it barely helped. The twins were warm only because their small bodies pressed against her. Her fingers shook as she held her phone, the screen glowing weakly in the cold air. Pride told her not to send the message. But hunger and freezing wind spoke louder. She typed with numb fingers. "Can we stay with you tonight? Just until morning. The kids are freezing." She pressed send, and without realizing it, her thumbs slipped, changing one number in the message that would change everything. 4 blocks away, inside the polished glass tower of Whitmore Holdings, Marcus Whitmore stepped out of a quiet conference room. The hallway was empty, except for the low hum of the building's heating system. Midnight meetings were normal for him. Billion-dollar deals often ran past dark. But tonight's negotiation had left a tight knot in his shoulders. He loosened his tie slightly and pulled out his phone as it vibrated. Another financial update, he assumed, but the message on the screen made him stop walking. "Can we stay with you tonight? Just until morning. The kids are freezing." Marcus frowned. Beneath the message blinked a small location tag, and above it, one name, Elena. For a moment the hallway disappeared around him. 6 years. 6 years since she had vanished from his life without a word, no call, no explanation, just an empty space where their future had once lived. His chest tightened as he read the message again. Kids. His eyes hardened slightly as he turned toward the elevator. Car. Now. He told his driver through the phone. The black sedan cut through the icy streets of Boston Harbor District. Snowflakes bounced against the windshield while the city lights blurred through the storm. Marcus stared out the window but saw none of it. Elena. The name still had weight inside him. He had searched for her once, for months after she disappeared. But every lead had gone cold, like someone had erased her completely. And now she had sent him a message. His jaw tightened. Kids. "Stop here," he said suddenly. The driver slowed beside a quiet stretch of Hawthorne Street. Under the yellow glow of a street lamp sat a metal bench, and on that bench, her. Marcus stepped out before the car had fully stopped. His shoes crunched over frozen grit as the wind whipped his coat open. Elena looked up. For a moment, neither of them spoke. 6 years collapsed into silence between them. Her face looked thinner than he remembered. Her coat was worn. Snow dusted her dark hair. The twins stirred slightly in her arms. Marcus's gaze dropped to them. 2 small faces pressed against her chest, their cheeks pink from the cold. His voice came out low. "Are they warm enough?" Elena shifted the blanket around them. "We'll manage," she said quietly. "You should go." Marcus took a slow step closer. The wind pushed snow across the sidewalk between them. "Let me help," he said, "just for tonight." She shook her head immediately. "No." The word came quickly, almost sharp, but then the little boy in her arms coughed. It was a thin, dry sound that cut straight through the cold air. Elena's jaw tightened. For a long second she said nothing. Then she nodded once, slowly. The ride to Marcus's building was silent. The heater in the car melted the frost clinging to their coats. Water dripped softly onto the floor mat. The twins leaned against Elena, half asleep again. Marcus sat across from them, his eyes on the dark city sliding past the windows, but his attention kept drifting back to the children. The boy had Elena's dark hair. The girl had wide eyes that reminded him of someone he couldn't quite place. A quiet unease settled deep in his chest. When the car stopped beneath the high-rise entrance, Marcus stepped out first. "Come on," he said. Elena followed slowly, guiding the twins through the glass doors. Warm air rushed over them inside the marble lobby. The elevator ride was quiet except for the soft ding of the floor numbers. Marcus swiped a keycard when they reached the top floor. "This way." He led them down a quiet hallway and opened the door to a corner guest suite. The room was large, but simple. Warm light filled the space, and the quiet hum of heating wrapped around them like a blanket. Elena carefully sat the little girl on the sofa before kneeling to remove the boy's boots. Her movements were quick and practiced. Marcus stood near the doorway, watching. In 6 years he had imagined seeing her again many times. But never like this. Never with 2 children clinging to her like she was their whole world. "There are clean towels in the bathroom," he said quietly. "I'll send up food." Elena nodded without looking at him. "Thank you," she said, "but just for tonight." The words landed heavier than she intended. Marcus simply nodded. A few minutes later, room service arrived. Hot chicken soup, fresh bread. 2 mugs of cocoa topped with melting marshmallows. The twins' eyes lit up the moment they saw the food. "Eat slowly," Elena told them gently. Steam curled from the bowls as the children took careful bites. Marcus leaned against the dining counter, pretending to check his phone, but his eyes kept drifting back to the way Elena brushed her daughter's hair away from her face without thinking, to the small cough the boy tried to hide between sips of soup. After they finished eating, Marcus gathered the empty dishes and set them by the door. The twins soon curled together under a blanket on the sofa. Elena adjusted it around them carefully. "You should take the bedroom," Marcus said. "It's warmer." She shook her head. "They'll need me." Marcus studied her for a moment before nodding. "Good night, Elena." She didn't answer right away, but as he turned to leave the room, he heard her whisper softly, "Good night." Morning light crept through the tall windows. Marcus was already in the kitchen when Elena stirred. The smell of toast and scrambled eggs filled the room. The twins shuffled out soon after, still sleepy, but smiling. Marcus set plates on the counter. "Breakfast," he said simply. Elena hesitated before joining them. The little boy reached for a slice of toast, glancing nervously between Marcus and his mother. "You don't have to do this," Elena said quietly. Marcus met her eyes. "It's just breakfast." They ate mostly in silence, but every few moments the twins giggled softly at something only they understood. Marcus watched them carefully. The easy rhythm between the 3 of them. The quiet way Elena cared for them. Something deep inside him stirred. When the meal ended, Marcus checked his watch. "I have a meeting in 2 hours," he said. "I can arrange a driver to take you anywhere you need." Elena straightened slightly. "We'll be fine." Marcus nodded once. Then he spoke again. "At least let me take the boy to see a doctor." Elena froze. The boy coughed again, that same dry rasp. Her eyes flickered with worry. Marcus's voice softened slightly. "Just the doctor?" Elena looked at her son, then back at Marcus. Finally she nodded. "Only the doctor." Marcus grabbed his coat. But as they stepped out into the cold morning air again, one quiet question pressed against his mind harder than the freezing wind. Because when the little boy slipped his hand into Elena's, Marcus noticed something that made his chest tighten. The child had the exact same gray eyes he saw in the mirror every morning. And suddenly one thought echoed through his mind. "Are they mine?" The cold morning air hit them the moment the glass doors opened. Snow crunched beneath their shoes as they stepped onto the quiet street. Elena pulled the twins, coats tighter around them, while Marcus walked half a step ahead, scanning the sidewalk. The clinic was only a few blocks away, but the wind made the walk feel longer. The boy coughed again, softer this time, and Elena rubbed his back gently. "Almost there," she whispered. Marcus reached the door first and held it open. Warm air rushed out to meet them as they stepped inside. The waiting room smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee. A nurse greeted them with a quiet smile and guided them down the hall toward the pediatric wing. Elena helped her son onto one of the small chairs while the girl climbed onto her lap, clutching a stuffed rabbit. The nurse handed Marcus a clipboard. "Dad can fill these out." The word hung in the air. Elena's head lifted sharply. Marcus paused only for a second before taking the clipboard. His pen hovered over the blank line labeled parent or guardian. Then he wrote his name, Marcus Whitmore. Elena watched him, something uneasy flickering in her eyes. When the nurse returned, she led the little boy into the exam room. Elena followed, but Marcus remained just outside the doorway, listening quietly. The pediatrician spoke in calm, steady tones as she checked the boy's breathing. "It's a mild respiratory infection," she said after a moment. "Nothing serious, just medication and rest." Elena exhaled slowly, the tension leaving her shoulders. Marcus stood near the wall, his hands tucked in his coat pockets, watching the boy swing his legs gently on the exam table. When the prescriptions were ready, Marcus took them without discussion and paid at the front desk. Outside, snowflakes drifted lazily through the gray sky. "I'll drive you to the pharmacy," Marcus said. Elena shook her head. "It's close. We can walk." Marcus didn't argue. He simply fell into step beside them. The twins shuffled along between them. The girl hummed softly while the boy leaned lightly against Elena's side. At the pharmacy counter, Marcus handed over the prescription while Elena browsed a small shelf of children's thermometers. When the pharmacist returned with a paper bag, Marcus took it and turned toward her. "Do you have enough for food this week?" Elena didn't answer right away. "We'll manage." "That's not what I asked." Her eyes lifted to his, guarded. "We'll be fine, Marcus." They walked back toward the building in silence. Snow continued to fall, soft and steady. When they returned to the penthouse, Elena immediately began gathering the twins' small belongings. "We'll leave this afternoon," she said quietly. Marcus frowned. "Where will you go?" Quote, "That's not your concern." "It is," he replied, his voice calm but firm, "whether you like it or not." Before she could respond, the boy began coughing again. Elena knelt quickly beside him, rubbing his back. Marcus crouched down as well, meeting her eyes. "Stay here," he said quietly, "at least until he's better." Elena hesitated, pride battled with worry across her face. Finally, she gave a small nod. 2 days, quote. Marcus stood slowly, relief flickering in his expression. 2 days. That night, the twins slept peacefully in the guest bedroom. Elena sat alone on the sofa, watching snow swirl past the tall windows. Marcus stepped into the room, carrying 2 mugs of tea. He set one in front of her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Elena," he said quietly. 6 years ago, why didn't you tell me?" Her fingers tightened around the warm mug. "Because it wouldn't have changed anything." Marcus shook his head. "You don't know that." She looked up at him then. Her eyes were steady, but something painful lingered beneath the surface. "I know exactly what your family is capable of." Silence filled the room. Outside, snow drifted through the glow of the city lights. Marcus studied her face, trying to read the truth hidden behind her calm expression. But before he could speak again, Elena stood. "It's late," she said softly. Marcus nodded. The conversation ended, but the question remained between them. The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through the windows. Elena carried 2 small bowls of oatmeal into the kitchen while Marcus poured coffee at the counter. "How's he feeling?" Marcus asked. "Better," she replied. "No fever overnight." "That's good." Marcus hesitated before continuing. "I cleared my morning." Elena glanced at him. "I thought we could take the kids somewhere warm for a bit. The aquarium, maybe." Her brows knitted slightly. "They need rest." "They've been inside for days," Marcus said gently. "A little distraction might help." He paused. "And maybe a change of air for you, too." Elena didn't answer. Soon the twins padded into the room, still in their pajamas, laughing quietly. Marcus watched as Elena coaxed them into eating their breakfast, her patience steady and warm. After the meal, he left briefly and returned holding 2 small winter coats. Brand new. "I guess the sizes," he said, placing them on a chair. Elena looked at the coats, then at him. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." The words lingered between them. The aquarium glowed in soft blue light. Huge tanks shimmered along the walls while schools of fish drifted slowly through the water. The twins ran ahead, pressing their hands against the glass. "Look," the girl whispered as a jellyfish floated past. Marcus smiled faintly. Elena stood beside him, watching the children with quiet affection. "They're beautiful," Marcus said softly. It wasn't clear if he meant the jellyfish or the children. Halfway through the visit, Marcus stepped aside to answer a phone call. His voice dropped low. "I need everything you can find on Elena Carter's rental history over the last 6 years," he said quietly. "Addresses, legal records, anything." He ended the call quickly before Elena noticed. When they returned to the penthouse that evening, the sky had already darkened. Snow covered the city streets again. Elena helped the twins out of their coats, while Marcus watched from the doorway. "Tomorrow," he said slowly, "let me take them to the park for an hour." Elena froze slightly. "I want to know them," Marcus added. She turned to look at him. For a long moment she said nothing. Finally she nodded. 1 hour. Marcus gave a small nod. 1 hour. The park was quiet beneath a thin blanket of snow. The twins ran ahead toward the playground, their laughter echoing across the frozen pond. Elena stood beside Marcus, her hands tucked into her coat pockets. "They don't know," she said quietly. Marcus looked at her. "Know what?" "About you." A muscle tightened in his jaw. "I never told them," she continued softly. "I didn't want them growing up wondering why their father wasn't there." Marcus stared at the snowy ground. "I should have been." "You couldn't have been," Elena said. He looked up. "What does that mean?" She met his gaze. "They made sure of it." Marcus's chest tightened, and suddenly the past no longer felt like a mystery. It felt like something far more deliberate, something someone had worked very hard to hide. And for the first time since seeing the twins, Marcus realized someone might have stolen 6 years of his life, and he intended to find out who. That evening, the penthouse was quiet. The twins had fallen asleep early, tired from their afternoon at the park. Soft light from the hallway spilled into the living room while snow drifted past the tall windows. Marcus sat at his desk in the study, a manila folder open in front of him. Inside were pages his investigator had sent only hours earlier. Rental records, old forwarding addresses, legal filings. Every document told the same story. Elena had been moving from place to place for years, always staying just long enough before disappearing again, as if someone had been pushing her further and further away. Marcus flipped to the last page. At the bottom sat one name, Richard Whitmore, his uncle, and a senior board member in his company. Marcus leaned back slowly in his chair, the paper crinkling in his tightening grip. The door opened softly behind him. Elena stepped into the room. "What are you looking at?" she asked quietly. Marcus closed the folder. "Nothing you need to see tonight." She studied him for a moment, sensing the tension in his shoulders, but she didn't push. Instead, she simply nodded and left the room. But Marcus stayed awake long after the lights in the penthouse went dark, because now he knew someone hadn't just separated them. Someone had planned it. The next morning, Marcus asked Elena to meet him for coffee at a quiet cafe near the harbor. Snow covered the sidewalks while waves rolled slowly against the frozen docks outside the window. Elena sat across from him, both hands wrapped around her coffee cup. "There's something I need to tell you," Marcus said. Her expression tightened slightly. "I think I know who forced you out of my life." Elena's fingers froze around the cup. Marcus continued quietly, "My uncle, Richard." The name seemed to drain the color from her face. "You remember him?" Marcus said gently. Elena nodded slowly. "I remember." Marcus leaned forward. "And I'm not letting him do it again." She looked up at him. "Marcus, if you fight him, it won't stay private." "I know. He'll go after the twins." Marcus's voice was calm but firm. "Then the world will know exactly what I'm fighting for." Quote, For a long moment, neither of them spoke, but something had shifted. The past was no longer hiding in silence. 2 days later, the phone rang in the penthouse while Marcus was out. Elena answered. A smooth, controlled voice greeted her. "Elena Carter," the man said. "It's been a long time." Her grip tightened on the receiver. "What do you want?" "I heard you've returned to Boston," Richard Whitmore said lightly. "I thought it would be polite to remind you that your stay should remain temporary." Elena's heart pounded. "I'm not leaving." Richard chuckled softly. "You should reconsider. The world can be difficult for someone without resources. My children are not your concern." "No," he replied calmly. "But Ethan Whitmore's reputation is." The line went silent for a moment before his voice returned colder. "Ask yourself something before you decide to stay. Can you truly protect them?" Quote. The call ended. Elena stood there long after the dial tone faded. That evening, Marcus found her by the window, the phone still in her hand. "Richard called," she said quietly. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Good," he replied. She turned sharply. "Good?" "Yes." His voice was calm but unyielding. Because now it's out in the open. The following morning, Marcus walked into the Whitmore Infrastructure boardroom. The skyline stretched behind the tall glass windows, while executives filled the seats around the long table. At the far end sat Richard Whitmore, leaning casually against the polished wood. "You're letting sentiment cloud your judgment," Richard said, before Marcus even sat down. Marcus placed a folder on the table. "They're my children," he replied calmly, "and she's the woman I love." Richard's smile thinned. "This situation makes you vulnerable." Marcus slid the folder toward him. Inside were documents, financial records, unauthorized transfers, deals pushed through without the board's approval. Richard's smile faded. "You think this changes anything?" Quote, "I think the board will care more about fraud than my personal life," Marcus said evenly. The room filled with murmurs as executives leaned closer to the documents. By midday, the decision was made. Richard Whitmore was suspended pending investigation. Unanimously. Downstairs in the lobby, Elena stood before a small crowd of reporters. Cameras flashed. Microphones rose toward her. She took a deep breath. "6 years ago," she said, her voice steady, "I was in love with Marcus Whitmore. We planned a life together." The reporters leaned closer, but someone in his family made it clear that if I stayed, they would destroy both of us. She paused briefly. "So I left." Quote, gasps rippled through the crowd. "I left while carrying his children." The words echoed through the lobby. "I stayed away because I believed I was protecting him." Her voice softened slightly. "But my children deserve their father. And we deserve to live without fear." That night the penthouse felt different, quieter, lighter. Marcus and Elena sat together in the living room, while the twins slept down the hall. "You were right," she said softly. "We had to tell the truth." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "We're not finished yet," he said, "but now we're fighting on our terms." Weeks passed. The headlines faded. Richard Whitmore's investigation continued quietly behind the scenes, but life inside the penthouse changed in ways Marcus never expected. Morning laughter echoed down the hallway as the twins raced toward breakfast. Elena moved through the kitchen easily, her hair tied back while sunlight filled the room. The glass tower that once felt cold and empty slowly began to feel like a home. One evening, Marcus showed Elena a set of blueprints spread across his desk. "A housing project," he explained, "for families who need a place to start again." Elena studied the plans. "You're doing this because of me." Marcus shook his head. "I'm doing it because I should have been there that night." Months later, snow fell again over Boston, but this time the city felt different. Marcus, Elena, and the twins walked slowly down Hawthorne Street. They stopped beside the same metal bench where everything had begun. Snow covered the seat in a thin, white layer. Elena brushed a hand across the cold metal. "This is where everything changed," she said quietly. Marcus sat beside her, and where it started again. The twins ran nearby, laughing as they chased snowflakes through the air. Marcus slipped his hand into Elena's. For a moment, they simply watched the children play. 6 lost years, and a lifetime finally beginning again. Snow continued falling softly around them, but this time, none of them felt the cold. If you believe stories still matter, go ahead and hit subscribe. Stories Beyond the Porch. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel.